All right, so the next thing we're going to focus on is calculating metrics. So I'm going to open up this file again that I saved from last time, and I am going to be preparing this data for analysis over here. So during the analysis, I'm actually going to calculate some graph metrics, some of the things you're familiar with from the readings, measures of centrality like in degree, out degree. I think one of you had mentioned in the forums eigenvectors, centrality. Someone added that to the glossary as well. So we're going to be calculating these metrics, and we're also going to be partitioning the graph into groups based on the ways that they interact with each other and to what extent. So who's interacting with who. And it's automatically going to partition those into groups for us. So it's going to kind of look for subcommunities. But like I said, before we get started on that, there's a couple things we want to make sure we've done. I'm going to click on Show Graph so I can see the graph again. I'm going to make sure that this is a directed graph. Directed means that these communications aren't necessarily two-way. The relationship is not necessarily a two-way relationship. So this person may have responded to that person, but that person didn't necessarily respond back. This is different from a Facebook network, like I mentioned before, where you can't be someone's Facebook friend unless they agree to be your friend. So the relationship is mutual. So let's go over here and prepare data. What we're going to do is we are going to be counting and merging these duplicate edges. Since we pulled in the Twitter data, it already got the vertices for us. So if we go to this vertices worksheet down here, we can see that it's already pulled in all the people that are part of this network, as well as information about these people, like how many people they followed, how many followers they have, how many tweets they have. This person has a ton of followers. Oh, it's the Onion. That's interesting. It's going to pull in their information as well, but since it's already pulled that in, we don't need to do that. However, we do want to get a measure of the number of times these people have interacted with each other, so the strength of these relationships, whether these are sort of weak ties or stronger ties. So let's count and merge duplicate edges. Just to give you a quick sense of this, though, let me do a quick sort of these people from A to Z. So you can see right here this action in C. This person has tweeted out just to themselves. They didn't mention or reply to anybody. And this is the actual content of the tweet, of each one of those tweets. Here's another example of, let's see, a duplicate tweet here. So this person mentioned, there we go. This person mentioned education in C in one of their tweets. So it's directed at education in C. And they've done that 2 different times. So this person has mentioned education in C 2 different times in 2 different tweets, and those are the contents of those tweets. So we're preparing data. We're going to count and merge these, but we're not actually going to merge them. We're just going to count them. And the reason we're not going to merge them is if we merge them, what's going to happen is it's going to turn this these 2 tweets into just a single tweet, and then it's going to add a count over here in the column. So it's going to collapse these into just a single tweet. Or into just a single relationship with a measure of that relationship, a sort of the strength, the number of times those people have interacted. And the reason we're not actually going to merge them in the sheet, it's not going to make any difference for the metrics, and it's not going to make any difference for the actual visualization, but the only thing that would help do is just clean up the edge list a little bit so we don't have so many particular rows, which is nice when you have a ton of data. But once we merge them, the problem is then we lose the content of the tweet. It's going to take the content that's just at the very top, and it's not going to leave the content that was at the bottom. So we lose information about the network. Specifically, we're losing the content of a number of the tweets. So let's go ahead and count those duplicate edges, and then it's going to get a measure of how many people are, how many times those people have interacted with each other, either back and forth or just one way. So what that did was it inserted over here a weight to the relationship. And if we sort these, we can see some of the stronger relationships from some of the weaker relationships. This person, curriculum blog, it looks like they've sent out a lot of tweets, but not to anyone in particular, and they sent out a lot of tweets in this education in C. I'm kind of curious, though, to see if we have any strong relationships that aren't just tweets to themselves or just tweets sent out into the void. It looks like for the most part, the strongest ties are just Yep, there we go. 8. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it looks like the strongest tie is actually between those two that we saw, this education in C and this individual. And there we go. As we can see, it looks like there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 back and forth between these two individuals. Very interesting. Okay, so we've gone ahead, we've prepared our data, we've counted. We haven't really merged those duplicate edges, but now we have a kind of a measure of the strength of those relationships. All right, so we've actually calculated one metric. So right now what we have is a measure of the strength of these ties. So how many times they've gone back and forth with each other, or even just one way. So that's going to give us one measure. Now we need to calculate some other measures here. So we are going to go over here to this analysis section, and we're going to go to graph metrics first. So if we click on graph metrics, it's going to give us a range of options for metrics that we can calculate for this graph. It's also going to give definitions for these metrics, which is very helpful, especially for beginners. So let's go ahead and calculate some of these. We are definitely going to want vertex in degree. We don't need degree because that's only for undirected graphs. So that's the degree is the number of people you have relationships with. But in this case, the relationships are not necessarily mutual. So here we have vertex in degree. So in this particular context, the in degree is how many people, this is the number of people who have replied or mentioned you in their tweet. So that would be what the in degree is for this particular network. We are also going to get a vertex out degree. So in this particular context, this is the number of people that you have mentioned or replied to in a specific tweet. We're also going to get some other measures. This is the eigenvector centrality. So this is a measure of not only how central you are to the network, but how well connected you are to other people who are central to the network. I believe one of the papers, and I think the video also mentioned that this is a version of this measure is used for establishing PageRank within Google searches. We'll go ahead and get this betweenness measure and closeness, and I think this is definitely one we want to have as well. So we want edge reciprocation. So this is actual whether or not the relationship between two people, so two people who have had a back and forth communication. So I've replied to you, and in response, you have replied to me at some point during this conversation or during this chat. We're going to go ahead and calculate group metrics, and that's going to allow us to sort them into groups. We can also do word pairs, words and word pairs. So this is going to actually pull out the counts of words within the tweets. Let's see, we can do top items. This is a little bit much for this. We're just going to focus on edge reciprocation. We do want vertex reciprocated vertex pair ratio as well. So that's another measure of reciprocation within the graph. And I think that's all we're going to really need right now. So let's go ahead and calculate those. If you want to do these words and word pairs, that's actually really interesting. And the Twitter search network top items is, you can go ahead and select that as well. So let's go ahead and calculate these metrics. And now it's going to take us to the metrics sheet of the NodeXL. Right, so we can see in this network, it's going to give us a summary of the network as a whole. So we have 464 individuals in this network. This is the number of unique edges, so the number of unique relationships between people. We also have the total number of edges. So this means some of these relationships are duplicated. So we saw, for example, there was 7 communications between education NC and that other individual. Number of self-loops, so 267 tweets that didn't mention or reply to anybody. They were just sent out to anybody following the NCED hashtag. We're also going to get a measure of reciprocation in this network. So this is a measure of back and forth between two individuals. We have a number of other measures here. We're not going to really focus on those. Graph density, as the networks gets bigger and bigger, the density gets smaller and smaller. We're not going to worry about that one for this unit either. And then we're also going to get down here, you're going to see histograms of these in degree and out degree measures. So you can see that there's quite a number of people with very few in degree, so very few mentions or replies for a lot of people. And then the maximum number is 82. So I wonder who has received 82 mentions or replies. That's actually very interesting. And then out degree, same thing right there. All right. So now when we go over to our vertices worksheet, we now have these measures calculated for all of these individuals. So now we have some actual social network measures for the individuals in this network. These measures right here, we've got in degree and out degree. So the NC forum, this person, this individual, or actually I think this is an institution, they have been mentioned or replied to 4 times. This I Love Educating has been mentioned or replied to 9 times, or by 9 people, actually. Not the number of times, but by the number of people who have replied to or mentioned that person. That's one thing, an important distinction to make, is this isn't the number of times they've been replied to. It might actually be more than this. This is the number of individuals who have replied to that person. And we can see that person right over here in the network. And this out degree is the number of people that they have mentioned or replied to. Not necessarily how many times they've replied to or mentioned people, but how many actual people they've replied to or mentioned. Then we're going to get these measures of other centrality measures. Our focus for this unit is just in degree and out degree. These are very basic measures, and these are ones you'll most commonly see reported in any sort of paper. And then we are also interested in this reciprocated measure. So what we've done now is we've calculated measures both for the relationships as a sort of indicator of the strength of the relationship, and we've also calculated measures for the network as a whole and measures for individuals within this network. So these are measures of these individuals' positions within this network. And as you might have recalled from some of the videos and the readings, one of the core tenets of network theory is that your position within a network and the structure of the network as a whole has an impact on those individuals' outcomes. So a core tenet of network theory is not so much it's the attributes of you as an individual, but rather it's where you are in this network and the relationships you have that are a better predictor of your individual outcomes.